Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You seem like a very interesting person. I was going through your books. You've written a lot of them, and you're all really about fandom and Hollywood and that sort of thing. And your book, The Last Decade of Cinema, sounds intriguing. I could hardly wait to have you tell me all about that. But with a life like yours, I think it's important for you to tell us who you are, where you come from, and how you got to this point where you are writing so many books.
Well, thank you. I love your little setup there, and I love you got a keyboard to the side. Does that mean if I'm gonna burst out in song that you will immediately accompany me?
Maybe, or maybe I have funny sounds sampled in.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll try to get a rim shot at some point.
Okay,
That'll
all
be
right.
my most important thing that I'll
Okay,
be shooting for.
all right.
I come from a small town in Ohio called Massillon, and they're known for a football team. And I actually do a YouTube show about the high school football team and just wrote a book about them winning the state championship for the first time in my life. So that was like a big deal for me. And I always loved art. Even as a little kid, when I watched television, I wanted to know how they did it. I could always see beyond what was on the screen, like who wrote that. I would always watch the credits of things. Like I still do. I'm so fascinated by who is the editor on this. And wow, that shot was so interesting. I want to know about that. So that's where my books all come from, is really a question. There's
Oh,
always a question that I have, and then I want to find that artist and I want to find out, how did you make that? What is the recipe
hmm.
for the dish you made?
Yeah. Funny that you mentioned credits. Being that I worked in film and I was in post-production, our credits were always at the end because they have to mention the production and then the post-production. And I got to love watching credits. But then I get disappointed in recent times when you're watching Netflix or something and the credits just, all the credits and they minimize it and it's gone away. So, no, I was reading that. What happened to that? Mm.
And I talk a lot about that in this book. This book is a lot about appreciating film and all the things. And one of the things I bring up is that a preview for a movie, that's like for the populace, but the credits for a movie, that's for a cinephile. That is
Right.
where I learned everything. Learn who that DP is, who edited that, who wrote that, who did the score to this movie. So many times I'm watching a movie and I'm thinking, oh, this sounds like Hans Zimmer. I'm pretty sure this is going to be Hans Zimmer. And then I want that credit to come up at the end.
Yeah.
And they're like, ah, dang, it was
Yeah.
Randy Newman. I should have got that.
Mm.
But I think all that stuff matters, and I hate how Netflix and Paramount Plus and HBO Max, they take them away in a second, and you
Yeah.
can't even get back there, and
No,
even to watch it again, because they were like, well, you must want to start at the beginning. Nobody cares who the third AD was. Well, I do.
I do. I do too as well. I watch out for casting directors and who did the
Sure.
ADR on this? It was really terrible. So this book of yours, The Last Decade of Cinema, when did you write that?
So I worked on it during COVID. This was an idea that just sort of came to me because, as all of us, we were stuck in our home and I wanted to watch a movie and I just couldn't find one. And I just don't like new movies. There was just nothing. Everything I looked at was the same thing. Another superhero movie, another guy in a cape looking for a glowing rock, another spaceship shooting another spaceship. Every movie I ended up watching was from the 90s. I wasn't doing it on purpose. I just would watch a movie and I'd be like, oh, when was this made? And it was in the 90s. And that's when I started to think about this idea that the 90s were the last decade where they made movies for grown-ups. And there was a variety of movies. It wasn't all the same. So I ended up making a list. It was a little bit too long. It was 160 films. And I watched all 160 films. I worked on this book for about 4 years. I whittled it down to 25 essays from watching the 160, but I had a good enough background of what really was a 90s film.
Okay. Well, not 90s films, I really like them too. I'm not crazy about 80s films so much. Some of the 70s films are okay. Yeah, as I go further back, I don't mind the 50s, I suppose.
Right.
And these decades have different flavors all throughout them. What is it about movies that, besides what you mentioned before, about the modern movies that you think is something, what's wrong with them? I mean, why don't you like them?
Well, because they're not made for me. That's the first thing.
Okay.
So it's okay. Like, I'm not attacking anyone's art. That's one
Sure.
of the things. Like this book is not me like picking apart modern movies. In fact, I don't even mention any. All the movies I talk about are just from the 90s. I like to lift art up, not push
Yeah,
art
for
down.
sure. For sure. Yeah.
But as an example, I do not like a scene in a movie where it is two best friends and the one best friend says to the other, a best friend, "Hey, best friend, remember how we went to elementary school together and we've never had a fight the whole time we've known each other?" You don't say that to your best friend. They know how long they've known you. And I point that out a lot in my book. It's showing how movies could tell us that these two people were best friends without the characters exclaiming it. And that's all that happens in movies now. You'll have a cop say, "Well, I'm the kind of cop that doesn't take that." And Martin Scorsese displays the kind of cop that won't take that from a
I
criminal.
see.
He doesn't have to. There's nobody that's telling you that, like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas is going to snap if you push him. Okay.
Right.
Nobody says that out loud.
Interesting.
You know it because Joe Pesci is playing that character. The scenes are there. That is the difference between 90s films and movies today. They thought you were smart and they also knew you weren't looking at your phone.
You're right. Right. Great. Um, how big is this book? Is it a thick book?
It's a thick book. It's the longest book I've written because I wrote, I honestly, I couldn't stop writing. It was really hard for me to end this book because I loved it so much. But I
Mm,
wrote about 25 films, and then there were some that were left off. So there's an epilogue that has 35 more films that I didn't want to leave out, but I only write like a paragraph
okay.
on them just to kind of let people know that because I was leaving out so much. And one of my rules was I couldn't pick a movie from the same director. And I also tried not to pick the same genre over and over again.
Hmm.
So there's one Western being Unforgiven, there's one action picture being Terminator 2, there's a straight drama being The Prince of Tides, a romantic comedy being Pretty Woman, because that was my other thesis that
Right.
we had choices in the 90s. We didn't just
Yeah.
have one movie with one theme.
Right. I was going to ask you about romantic comedies. They seem to be very popular in the 90s. You picked
Very.
Pretty Women. What other romantic comedies would be that you may not have mentioned, but that you think were really good in the 90s?
Sure. I mean, there was definitely You've Got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle. I would kind of submit that Clueless,
Mhm.
while it was really a teenage movie, is also certainly a romantic comedy as well. So there was a ton of them. That's how Meg Ryan, Julia Roberts,
Yeah.
they were huge stars.
Mhm.
And I don't know why they're not being made now. I really don't. Because we all like to fall in love and fall in love with those characters.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're not made anymore.
Okay, well, the geopolitics of the 90s are different than they are today, or when we entered into, from 2001 onwards. We know what happened then. Do you think that that affects what we go to the cinema for, what kind of movies they show?
Well, and this is the last essay in my book. It's called Fear Conquers Art.
Mhm.
And I talk about how the 90s really ended, the 90s cinema ended on September 11th,
Yeah.
2001. Um, because I specifically remember being in the theater and watching Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire came out in the summer of 2002, and that movie ends with Spider-Man like flying from building to building. He goes up on top, and my gosh, if he doesn't have an American flag right by him,
Mhm.
and it's like Don't worry about anything. You know, the movies are going to take care of you. Don't you even think anymore. We're all one.
Yeah.
And we stopped pushing people. When you compare that with what Spike Lee does in Malcolm X,
Hmm.
that is so controversial. And, you know, that movie begins with a burning American flag that becomes an X. I mean, can you see him making that movie in 2002?
No.
But it's just art, and it's art to make you think. And as a populace, we were okay. We
Mm,
could accept art and go, this is a movie. Wow, I have to think about that. But we didn't think, oh, Spike Lee hates his country. Cancel him, get him.
right.
And so I write about Malcolm X as well.
Hmm. Yeah. So when was this book published?
I think this summer, is it bad that I don't remember?
So it's maybe about 3 or 4 months it's been out. House sales.
I think it's a hard sell. It's been really difficult for me to get this out because my other books are one topic. Like Moonlighting, you can go right to Moonlighting fans, and my Letterman book goes right to the Letterman fans. This book is about bringing everyone into the tent. And I found that more of a challenge, which is kind of funny because I thought, oh, this book is going to be so much easier to sell because there's something for everyone. But we kind of live in a market now where something for everyone is
Ah,
like a bad thing. And the more niche you can get, it's almost the better. So it's finding its audience, but it's more difficult because it's hard to like burrow into that person.
yeah. Well, in the 90s, I remember Siskel and Ebert were something that we paid attention to what they thought. You may disagree with them sometimes. Is there anything like that going on now?
It's you.
Oh,
You're who everyone's paying attention to.
cool.
I
Excellent.
mean, that's how this works now. It's people on YouTube and it's people with podcasts and it's some guy with a Twitter account.
Hmm.
And, you know, I mean, he goes out and just says, like, Tom Cruise is horrible in this movie. And then that gets retweeted 10,000 times and the movie's dead. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to have anything to back up your opinion. I mean, look, I'm proof of that.
Yeah.
I'm writing about that. Now, what I do in the book is I interviewed some of the writers of the movie, the actors, and I try to back up my claims. I'm not just like shooting off my mouth without some proof to back it up. But on Twitter or Facebook, you actually don't need anything but your little old opinion.
Okay. Remind me, is this what you do for a living now? You write books?
Yes, and I run a publishing company.
Oh,
So I'm the president, co-president of Tucker DS Press and Fayetteville Mafia Press. We have a distributor with Simon and Schuster. My partner David Bushman and I run the company. So we put out a book a month and there's just two of us. So it's, you know, my book, I might do one book a year or something. But mostly I'm running a publishing company.
okay. And so when do you write? Are you first thing in the
I,
morning
I
writer?
do love to write in the morning. That's when I get up and I work. Like
Yeah.
there's no wasted time for me. But I'm not a precious writer. I actually don't think writing is precious at all. I will throw out a sentence. I don't think just because I wrote it, that means it's the greatest thing ever. I think if I wrote a book on another day, it would be it would be totally different.
Mhm.
I just do it when I have the time and I can be in the middle of writing and go help an author work on their front cover and get things out. And so
Your publishing company, does it publish fiction, fantasies, and that sort of thing?
we mostly are nonfiction, but since it's a new thing for us to be going out through Simon and Schuster, we are opening our doors to fiction. We've only done one fiction book up to this point. It was a science fiction book called The First Cylinder by Joe Doherty, who wrote for the TV show 30-something.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a book about 30-something. So that's how we sort of let that in. I don't know how to sell a fiction book.
Yeah.
Like I said, like with my Moonlighting book, I can go to Moonlighting fans, and Twin Peaks, I can go to Twin Peaks fans. I don't know. How do you get someone to read a new mystery? I mean, I don't know.
I've wondered that myself. That book, the Letterman book, sounds interesting. Why did you choose, I think it's the last 6 weeks of his show? What made you
So
choose
this
that?
was another thing that was just a question for me. I was a huge Letterman fan. I always said he was my TV best friend.
Hmm.
That hour I watched Dave every day, and that hour was like my hour. I never watched it with someone else. It was what I did. And I remember watching the last episode and being very sad because I was losing, such a part of my life. And the show ended with the Foo Fighters performing live to a video that was all pictures. And it was live. And I'm an editor, I edit things. And I thought, wait a minute. If you match pictures to a song, that's hard. It takes a long time to do that. And they did it live. I need to know how they did this. And so for 2 years, I tracked down Barbara Gaines, who was the executive producer of The Late Show, just to find out how she did the video, because I had read that she was in charge of that. And I interviewed her, and then she said, well, you got to talk to the editor who did it, and this person who did the research. And then that led to me interviewing just about everyone who worked on the show. And then I realized, well, this is a book about how this all came to be. And so I covered the last 6 weeks because I think Dave's ending on television really was something that we're not going to see again. Like he was kind of the last real broadcaster on television.
Yeah.
And again, everything is fractured now. But Dave was on when it was just, there was like 2 talk show hosts. Now there's 8 million.
That's right. I first noticed him in the 80s. He had a daytime show, I believe he started with. In fact, that failed, and they kept moving him around until they found the late night show, and then he thrived there. Have you always been a fan? Is that a personality trait of yours?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't it doesn't sound right, but also I'm not sure that I can refute it.
Hmm.
I think it's really weird because so many people say to me like, "Oh, you must, you love television so much." Well, the truth is, I actually don't watch very much television,
Hmm.
and I actually don't watch very many movies. I'm a fan of what's good, and my bar is super high. So I television doesn't just run in my house all day. Like I would never have TV just playing. That's horrible to me. I want to consume the best of art.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that inspires me to create art. But I've never seen a moment of reality TV in my entire life. Not one show, not for 1 second, because that to me, that's horrible. You're taking away writers and actors, and you're taking away their living, and you're teaching people to not have empathy for strangers. And so I've literally never seen Survivor or whatever, how to eat a cake,
Mhm.
the British cake eating bake
Yeah.
off. I don't do any of that. I don't judge, bless everyone's heart. You all do what you want to do, but that's not me.
Yeah.
So it's weird. So I don't really think of myself as a fan of television or a fan of movies. I'm a fan of high level art.
Well, it looks very familiar, this cover of your book. I see the film reels and it's on a projector of sort. I actually operated machines like that when I was younger, when I first started in film. I like the idea of this book. How is it being received by those who have bought it?
Um, I do not read reviews. I don't look at anything on the internet. So I don't know. I
Okay.
would never in a million years go to Amazon and look at whether it's been starred in Goodreads. I know that stuff is out there, and I recently just did a talk to authors where I told them, don't look. Don't look. I mean, I'm sure people are saying nice things and I appreciate that, but I make it for me
Hmm.
and then I put it out there
Okay.
and then I don't you got to just move on. You can't
Yeah.
get caught up in that. That's a bad place for you to be. I'm sure people are enjoying it.
Well, that's an interesting point because a lot of authors are really looking for the reviews, asking for reviews. Have you ever entered into a contest, any of your books, to see, you have to pay money for that to see if you can win a gold star or something like that?
Right. And it was funny because in the summer, I went to the LA Times book fair with this 90s book. And every author but me was an award-winning author. And they all had them. And I just thought it was the funniest thing. I don't know. I'm more of an underdog kind of person. That's sort of where I come from. I want to be the little guy, and so it really wouldn't necessarily be
Yeah.
my shtick to come in that way. Now,
Yeah.
I will say I get lovely emails. I put my email address in the back of every one of my books, and I say, if you have something kind to say about the book, I would love to hear from you. And I answer every email that I get.
That's nice.
And especially from the Moonlighting book, I get emails all the time from people who just loved it, and they tell me their stories about Moonlighting, which I think is really fun. And I like that. So a personal interaction with someone I really love, but to have I would never go look at something on the internet, or if I
Okay.
got 5 stars or something.
Sure.
I don't care about
Yeah,
the
right.
stars.
Okay. Talk about your team. Do you do everything internally, like editing is done through your publishing company, or do you farm that out to an editor?
So my partner David Bushman does all of the editing. He was an editor at Variety and an executive at TV Land. So
Good.
he takes that. I do all the design. So I design all the books. Sometimes we farm the covers out. We have a really good artist, Hannah Fortune, she did my cover. She actually did the cover that you were just talking about.
Hmm.
And sometimes I do them. So we do everything. We are as small a business as you can possibly get to be,
Sure.
because there's just two of us. And we're
Well,
trying to grow, but the industry is set up to not let people like us exist. I mean, they don't want, you know,
mm,
that's not how American business works. You don't want a little guy to have a good idea and make money off it. They want us sitting in cubicles working and making money for the top. That's the America that we live in now. So
yeah.
what we're doing is very difficult, and we're trying to go around things and make a little splash.
Okay.
And so it's fun. I mean, I like it.
Are you up for giving me a pitch on this book, telling people where they can get it and why they should buy it?
Of course. You can get The Last Decade of Cinema at Amazon if you love going to where everyone loves to go, but you can also go to my website, scottryanproductions.com, and you can go to Tucker DS Press. I also have an audio version of the 90s book where I read it, and I think my jokes come out really well when I read it because the book is actually very funny, and I really like the audio version quite a bit. So it's on Audible, so you have a lot
Mhm.
of options.
Okay.
And the pitch of the book is, if you are just sick of seeing the same thing over and over again, and you kind of want to remember what it was like to go to the video rental store and rent a VHS
Yeah.
and go home and watch it, and then let that movie be your whole evening, not
Yeah.
that a movie played while you did something else, and
Yes.
why that art mattered, and how these movies pushed us to accept a world that we weren't a part of. That's another thing that I really talk about. Some of these movies make you uncomfortable. Movies today, they don't want to make you uncomfortable. They want to make you buy the product that is in the background of the scene. Um, so I tried to pick movies like that where, and we were all still friends. We all could argue about movies, and
Hmm.
if that speaks to you, then I guarantee you're going to love this book, because it really honors the art that these incredible directors like Quentin Tarantino and Amy Heckerling and Martin Scorsese and Paul Thomas Anderson and the Coen brothers and Spike Lee. I mean, just these giants of cinema, the
Hmm.
art that they left us that's just sitting back there. And if we don't protect it, it's just going to fall away with your next episode button and skip the credits button that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So this book is here to say, I remember this, I lived through it, and this stuff matters. That was more than an elevator pitch, unless we were on a really big elevator.
Or
Maybe
we got stuck somewhere between floors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you just made me feel all nostalgic. I think tonight I'm going to suggest my wife and I watch a movie from the 90s. Wow. I remember
And
the
I think
90s.
you'll find that the movies are very, very different
Yeah.
and good, and you're going to feel something.
I remember the 90s, just like it was yesterday. Well, life moves on.
Yes.
So I'd like to have you back as a guest for season 5. By then, maybe you have written something else, or if not, maybe the year after that, whenever. It's been a delight speaking with you, Scott, and I wish you and your partner all the best in your business and your ventures moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, the next book I'm just finishing up today, really. I'm just doing my final read through, is about the music of Twin Peaks, written by Angelo Badalamenti and David Lynch. And it's got some great interviews. And so it comes out in June 2025. So I don't know when season 5 comes.
It'll be around that time. I'll be interviewing you from May and June, probably.
So there we go. So it works
timing.
out perfectly. Let's do it.
Let's do it then. Well, you have yourself a great Christmas and holiday time, which is coming right around the corner. And we'll speak next year sometime.
But you didn't hit the keyboard once.
No, it's not on right now. But you gave me some ideas.
Next time.
Maybe I should next season. I think I'll have it standing by, and if I don't like something, or if I like something, whatever.
Yeah. Plan that, because my book's about music. My next book's about music, so it works.
Perfect. I'm always trying to come up with new ideas.
We got it.
All right. You take care now.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.